today we're going to talk about why healing entails not just changing your thoughts, but changing your imagination. Because if it's just a matter of changing your thought, don't you think you would have thought your way out of your situation? So let's explore that today.
Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak and love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Rowan, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino-American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kapeng barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with the American culture, talks about trauma-informed care and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place.
This episode is brought to you by Story Therapy. This is a framework that I created, 10 sessions, longer than the usual therapy session, that gets into the root of why. But this is where you would learn how to transform. Things keep coming up with your relationship, with your life, why you self-sabotage yourself. We are going to transform your language, your experience, and your imagination. If you're interested, check the link to schedule a consult with me. Kamusta everyone? This is Rowan D. Samuels. It's nice to have you here. It's nice to be back. I just want you to know that this episode has a blog article. And if you prefer to read the article, I would link that in the show notes. But the question is, are you running with an old, outdated edition of your story that keeps you safe, but limits your life to be the greatest story ever told? Now, only greatest for you, because the key to that is it's your story rather than it's the greatest compared to everybody else's story. These stories that ruminate in your mind, are they stories passed on to you by your parents, stories of survival, by your ancestors, or confidence from yesteryears? Who is the original author of the story that has become your story? Very important question. You've heard before that the most important story is the story you tell yourself. Usually they're told in the subconscious. If your consciousness were a garden, so just imagine this, if you have a garden, the conscious part is the part you can see. That's the topsoil where things bloom or where weeds manifest. So those are the things that you can see, topsoil from the garden. The subconscious is the part of the garden that is hidden. It's under the topsoil. Whatever happens below the garden manifests in the topsoil. What are you growing in your garden? And what's lurking beneath the surface of your topsoil? The best stories are the stories that express the fullest you. Culture, family, even your geographical positioning can influence the type of stories you consume. Have you ever thought about that? The problem with stories is when you simply become the character in it rather than the creator of your own saga to be told. So remember, my friends, you're ever evolving. You're a creator. When you're living someone else's story, their truth can become your untruth. It's likened to fitting a shoe that is well fitted for someone else. Surely you can walk in it, but goodness, they can be painful, which is a reminder that those shoes don't belong to you. So if you've been so conditioned to believe an outdated story about yourself, is it enough to simply change your story? So could you just tell yourself another story, is the question. And honestly, as a therapist who's been a therapist for more than 50 years, I hope that's all you need to do. But years of conditioning manufactures a lens about the world that had you wearing a shoe that is painfully unfit for you. In this case, it takes more than telling yourself a different story, for the stories you live by have formulated your choice of words. That means your language, your relationship to yourself and the world, your experience, and the picture in your imaginal mind. I call this in my story therapy framework the LEI, like a lei, like a Hawaiian necklace. And those are the things that you want to transform. And I actually have a video that I would also link if you're interested in watching. It's the story therapy framework. Let's talk about the power of your imagination. Albert Einstein was quoted to say that imagination is more important than information. Do you agree? Anxiety is using your imagination. Basically, you're catastrophizing and predicting the future. So anxiety is very future oriented, but in a negative, catastrophic way. Depression is using your imagination to dream about what could have been different in the past. So it's past oriented. Both utilize your imagination or the imagery in your mind. And depending on what you allow yourself to see in your mind's eye, your imagination can affect your mood, the way you interact with others, and much of your decision making. So if you imagine that the future is bleak and scary, guess what? That would influence how you feel. Your body can also lead the way in pivoting to a different story. So imagine this as you're listening to me. Imagine smiling in the morning upon waking up, taking 2 minutes to notice your breath, and uttering to yourself a personal mantra. For example, thank you, morning, for coming again. So just let that sink in for a moment. Now, what does that bring your body? Now imagine the scenario above versus waking up hurriedly. Maybe this is you. You're rushing to the next busy thing to do, running down the checklist in your head without even saying it. Your body acts as if the coming of the morning is a curse. The other one, it feels like a blessing, and the other one's a curse based on your imagination. Notice how these two versions of starting your morning play out in your imagination and how differently you may feel about them. That, my friend, is the power of your imagination. Your imagination is rooted in the story that your body has kept through years of listening to other people's stories or crafting your own. If certain songs bring you back to your teenage years, this definitely happens to me, or a particular aroma in the kitchen reminds you of Noche Buena, that's your imagination. Because your imagination lies in the sensorial, meaning your senses. That's when it's at play. Now, healing modalities are different ways to heal that incorporate the use of imagination and not just talking about a story you wish to unsubscribe to. It's more an efficient way to begin to reauthor your own story. So that's why I use the story therapy, and I use the LEI. I also might use hypnotherapy. It's a map. The LEI framework is a map where you can enter any entry point, whether it's changing first your language, your experience, your imagination. It's basically a rotonda. So it doesn't matter which entry point. It's going to influence the other. So once you begin to change your language, how you speak to yourself, you begin to transform your imagination. It's also possible that once you begin to explore new experiences, E is the experiences, the E and the LEI, that you will begin to alter your language. Or by dream creating a new version of your life in your imagination, it's quite probable that you will begin to enter experiences that vibrate more of the story you want to tell yourself. I was just giving you an example how you can enter the language, the imagination, the experience in different entry point, and it would influence the other in a positive way. The power of transforming your imagination is in you. Now, how do you do this? We'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about aligning your imagination to your desire. Diyan ka lang. If you're interested in updating your outdated story, I am going to leave the link so you can watch the video about just story therapy, which is a framework I created, and it goes deep into changing, transforming your language, your experience, and your imagination. I'm glad you're still here. Thank you for sticking around. Let's talk about how do you align your imagination to your desire. One facet of trauma is that individuals who have experienced it seem to have left parts of their imagination in the past. In other words, you feel stuck. You may be triggered by a scent, a particular sound, and it doesn't have to be anything traumatic. It could be just something negative, a negative experience. It's the way your imagination, it goes back to somewhere, some place that it's scary, threatening, or just a place where you are feeling uncertain. To align your desire to your imagination, you must first allow yourself to desire something. I know it sounds counterintuitive. Some people feel unworthy or not good enough, even just to imagine a life beyond the one they have. That's why simply telling yourself another story is a good start, but may not be sufficient. Your imagination, which is part of the subconscious, so remember the part that's beyond the topsoil, needs to have a buy-in to the new story you want to tell yourself. Let me give you an example. If you have been abused as a child and believe you're unworthy of love, it may be a good start to tell yourself a better story, but a deeper reclaiming of your story is to allow your inner child to be witness, even get angry if necessary, or confront the abusive parent. All this can occur. It doesn't have to be in real life, because that sometimes may not be the safest thing for you to do, but all in your imagination. You could do this with a practitioner or a therapist. If you want to tend to your inner child, I want to actually invite you. There's a creative, expressive arts 30 days prompt that I created. You don't have to be an artist. It gives you a very short prompt and allows your child that has been stuck, whether it's trauma, maybe just unable to have a healthy attachment with your parent. It gives your inner child a chance to play, that having a happier childhood is you can get a second chance to that. It's called the Inner Child Playground, 30 Days to Restoration. I would also link that. In other words, let me go back to align your imagination to your desire. Locate your desire. Be specific. And even though it might sound out of reach, just desire it, but be specific. How it looks like, how you would feel, and practice envisioning your desire every day. Ask yourself, who do I want to be today so that I can fulfill my desire? I define desire as the reigniting of the fullest expression of yourself, the person you are, and the person you want to continue to create and recreate. Remember, my friends, you are a verb rather than a noun. So if you are just subscribed that I'm a caretaker, I'm a mother, that's a noun. And you want to shift that into a verb, because you're never just one thing. You're very complex. So if you are a nurturing mother, you're there you are, nurturing mother. And if you're caretaker, you could move that into a verb by I'm caretaking right now. So you are not subscribed simply with an identity that you're convinced or other people have convinced you that you are. So keep that into a verb. So here are my final thoughts. Your true story has always been with you. I call it in therapy that you were born with your original face. The conditioning of family, culture, and simply being human. We're all exposed to these types of things. Expose you to stories that can bring you closer to who you already are, or pull you further away from the greatest story you can tell yourself. And so I invite you to allow your imagination to evolve Your imagination lies in your subconscious mind. It's the hidden part of the garden, which can replay a scary story told so many times, or you can begin to dream about a story that brings you life. A story worth sharing to your descendants, and a story looked upon by your ancestors with pride. I hope this has been helpful and inspiring for you. Again, maraming salamat sa pakikinig. This is Rowan. Sa ulitin. Bye now.